Epperly, a founder and CEO who's ready to rewrite the definition of imposter syndrome. I created Who Made You the Boss to let you know that you're not alone. If you've been wondering whether your burnout is actually a sign toward evolution, or if perhaps there's something more to these challenges we face as leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs, you're in the right place if you're looking to embrace the challenges you once perceived as negative, if you're ready to own your entire story, and if you're working to level up your business in ways you never thought possible. You'll learn all of this and more by listening in and doing the hard work you know you were meant to do. So let's get started together today on Who Made You the Boss. Our season focused on purpose would not be complete without the voice you will be hearing from today. Britnie Turner is an absolute powerhouse, you guys. She is completely fueled by her faith and her mission, aka her purpose. She founded Ariel at the tender age of 21 when, get this, she was homeless and living out of her car. And within 7 years, she actually was recognized by Forbes for having one of the fastest growing women-owned companies. So yeah, she's the real deal. She's been shattering stereotypes about what is possible for women and young people in business for a while now. And what I love the most about her, and I've actually had the pleasure of meeting Britnie in person to say, yeah, this woman's actually a real person and not a fictional character who has accomplished this much in her life. And I'm barely scraping the surface with this intro. But what I love the most about her is that she is intentional in stating that her value as a human is the same as when she was living in her car to now when she owns a literal island in the Caribbean, and why it's important for us, no matter our faith background, to believe that same fact about our value. Because when we don't, then we really can't go after our purpose. Those little gremlins get in the way, and Britnie has some no-nonsense things to say about that negative self-talk. Before we dive in, we want to express our gratitude to Belmont for making this episode and the entire season 3 of Who Made You the Boss ad-free. And if you really want to thank them, then maybe consider staying at one of their 47 legendary hotels, taking a ride on one of their trains, or cruising on their amazing vessels the next time you travel. Remember, my team at Jet Set World Travel is ready to help you plan that trip thanks to our Bellini Club partnership. If you're enjoying this season of Who Made You the Boss, you might also appreciate our resource on turning imposter syndrome into inspiration. It's a guide to help you follow your purpose, just like our amazing guest today talks about. You can download that at lindsayepperly.com/resources, and that link is available in the show notes. So let's dive in with someone who's really going to rock your world with the way that she is hyper-focused on her purpose and what we can learn to be the same, thanks to Britnie Turner. Britnie, I am so excited to have you on today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay. So we talk a lot in the show about that moment you kind of looked yourself in the mirror and you said, I'm doing it. It's me. I'm going to be a leader. And I feel like you took control of your own life at such a tender age, right? You're 21 when you founded Ariel. What was that moment like for you? Like, how did you know I am capable of leading and moving people and motivating people? Like, what did that look like?
Well, I'll tell you right now, there's no moment. You make it sound a lot fancier than it was because it wasn't this big moment where I'm starting this great thing. I was an abysmal failure for 3 years before that, just desperately trying to learn anything about the real estate industry, starting at 18 years old during the greatest recession ever, as a female in the South with no network, no background, no education. And I wanted to do it all so that I could stop kids from being sex trafficked. And that was a really, really big deal to me, that I would be able to gain the resources, gain the influence, gain the money to be able to do something about it. And I want to encourage your listeners that if you don't have a powerful why, it's going to be really hard to be in business and or do anything great. I think it's at least in my path, I've always done things before it was cool. I've always been one of the only women. I've done only male-dominated industries, and I've always done things with such a different spin that the world wasn't quite ready for it yet. And the only way you can survive the obstacles that come with, trying to be a force for good, it is to know that why. And so weaving that in has been the best decision I've ever been able to make, and keeping that forefront has been huge. And a lot of you have, I would say, tasted your why. A lot of times your why will make you cry. It's not some big thing up in the clouds that the angels write on a blackboard saying, this is it, this is your only calling. Like, it's not always that clear. And you do have multiple purposes in your lifetime. But if your why will make you cry, think through the things that really move you. Think through the things that take you to heightened levels of anger or sadness. And that is going to be moving you physically because it's part of what you're supposed to do in this lifetime, in my experience. And so start asking yourself, well, what can I do about it? It's so overwhelming. I can't really make an impact. Does it not matter if you impacted one? Does it really not matter if I worked my whole life and I helped rescue one kid from being trafficked every day? Does that matter? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you're not going to get a lot of donations that way towards your nonprofit, but that doesn't matter. You do it for the one, you do it because it matters to you. And so, anyway, I just want to clarify, there's not been some big, beautiful, shining moment where I walked out on stage looking great. It's been a lot of calamity, a lot of pain, a lot of trying to figure it out, a lot of insecurity, and it looks great later. But I'm sharing this level of vulnerability with you guys because I don't want you to think it's a shining moment. And if you don't have a shining moment, you're not doing it right. Like, no, it feels horrible most of the time. And so that's just life. You're figuring it out, learning how to walk.
Yeah. And you know what? That's a really good distinction to make, because you're right. No one actually has that moment of like, and this is it. I am the boss. I am the leader. But it's more of you you knew you had a reason to lead. So tell us more about, like, how did you come to that why, and how did you come to the knowledge that it is me? I will lead in some way that I can actually help and make that impact, even if it is just on one.
Yeah, I met a little girl. I wanted to be a missionary since I was 12, and I went on mission trips every single summer. I'd work 5 jobs at a time just to be able to have the funds to go serve. And then at 17, I met a little girl that was so horrifically abused that she couldn't
Mm.
even physically speak.
Mm-mm.
So I was livid after hearing the story about what happened to her. So mad and so sad and so just nothing else in my life matters except for like doing something about this. I went back to my tent in Costa Rica and I got on my knees and I said, God, whatever it looks like, please use me. And I heard loud and clear, I'm going to take you out of the mission field and put you in business. And I was like, no, like immediately. First time I actually started hearing God's voice. I'm like, no, anything but that. And I want to encourage you too. Like a lot of times when you commit to doing something, the path is going to probably be different. And so instead of being mad about it like I was for a long time, it's better to view things as an adventure and to know that if
Mm.
you don't forget your calling, it won't go away. Life is not always the Instagram highlight reel that of like just doing the amazing parts every single day. No, a lot of it's not going to be your favorite or the funnest. And it still rolls up to having an amazing life of impact. And your experience is going to have a lot to do with your attitude and your gratitude. And if you
Mm.
can put a positive attitude and that gratitude on, then you've got a better filter. Then as you experience life, you're going to be filtering it more positively. And so I was the one to lead as you were. It still sounds fancier to me than I experienced it. When I realized I could not live in a world where this was happening and I do nothing.
Mm.
That's when I decided to start being a leader because I'm one of 6 kids, and my mom's like, oh, yeah, no, Brittany's the goofy one. She was the messy one. I can't believe she turned out to be the one that was so successful.
Mhm.
And that's also an encouragement to our listeners is doesn't matter what your personality test says. If you
Mhm.
want to do something in your life, adapt. You're always going to be able to be limited by whatever you choose to hold on to. The world's not going to push you to to be in your optimal state or to reach your potential. You are the only limitation on your life.
Tell me, when you just touched on the whole beginner's mindset. And I think that is oftentimes where we have this breeding ground of insecurity and of imposter syndrome. And that's something we talk a lot on this show about is this idea of like, well, gosh, if people knew that they're going to find me out. And I am so curious to talk to you about that because I've heard you open up about it on your own podcast on Broke to Woke. Interestingly enough, when I met you was my greatest season of imposter syndrome personally, right? I did a whole episode about this, about how we had that insane private island experience of it getting closed down due to COVID and how this whole time I'm battling these insecurities because my business was failing at the time because of the pandemic. And then I meet you who owns the island next door. And I'm like, oh my God, she's so intimidating. But you're so not. You're so approachable. You're so willing to share your full story with people. And I think it's important for everyone to know that success for you was not linear. It was not a big, shiny glory moment. It has been filled with those ups and downs. And I would love for you to spend a few minutes telling us about how you have tactically battled those insecurities. Like, what does that look like? What has imposter syndrome look like for you? How do you bat it away or how do you use it for your advantage?
Great question. I think waking up as a female, you just have this wonderful gift of insecurity. unlike so many men, it's really annoying. One of my good girlfriends, she gave me this little hand knit thing. It goes on your wall and it says, carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white male. I was like, no. It's so stupid. And again, I'm not being mean or sexist, but it's like, God bless. They do just have way more confidence naturally. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's societal. I don't know if it's part of being female, but it's wrong. It does feel wrong. And it's super annoying to deal with. So I've created a lot of systems around myself to keep myself awake. And when I say awake, my podcast is called Broke to Woke, and I hate the word woke, dang it. I had it first. But what we mean by woke is to be awake to your calling, to be conscious, to be aware of how much your life matters and that you do have purpose. And when I was 17, I went to this leadership / missionary training school. And this guy said one day, he said, today we're going to write your eulogy. And I was like, what is eulogy? And he said, it's the story they read about you when you die. And I was like, that's really morbid. And he's like, we're doing it. I'm like, all right, fine. So I wrote it, and I remember just busting into tears because though I was a really good kid, because I knew I wanted to be a missionary since I was 12. So it's like, you can't get away with anything. So I never drank, smoked, kissed any boys, or I was a very good kid, never even cussed before. And though I was a good person on paper, I was not doing anything in my life to make that story true. Essentially was getting by being good versus being intentional. And that day I woke up and I said, I have to live an intentional life. I want to live an intentional life. I get to live an intentional life. And so if I could encourage y'all to get past your insecurity and your imposter syndrome, quick and dirty, everybody sucks at everything most of the time, and we're all learning. Bottom line. That was my biggest awakening as an adult, is nobody knows what they're doing. They're all just making it up. And as technology changes, everything can always be better all the time. So just be kind to yourself, know that you're figuring it out, and so is everybody else. And then insecurity, you gotta please write this down. It is that you serve no one by playing small. So by writing your eulogy, you can have what I call the aerial perspective on your life, knowing that I do matter. I have stuff that I need to do. And therefore, I got to get over this little bull crap and start focusing on stuff that matters to make this story true, because I'm here for a reason. There is a divine calling that I am part of, that I get to be a blessing to somebody out there who needs me. And therefore, I should start activating versus self-destructing. So that eulogy exercise is the most powerful thing you could ever do.
Is there a kinder way we go about talking to ourselves, though? Is the voice in your head ever that critic that's also kind of fueling the, hey, wake up, snap out of it, like the tough love side? Or what is that? Is it always tough love for you? Or is there room for self-compassion?
Of course, there's self-compassion, but in the tough love stops you from basically makes you wake up and realize it's a waste.
Yeah.
You realize it's a waste, then you're automatically going to be kind to yourself. So the point is, if you can beat up the attacker,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so therefore you know that by being kind to yourself, by being loving towards yourself, by having grace, you can't give what you don't have, Mother Teresa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how can you have a pure, authentic love connection to your child or your husband or your friends or the world if you don't love yourself? And
Right.
so I want you to, my husband is a Green Beret, and he describes this really well. He says, I must view those thoughts as the enemy, and I destroy my enemy. And so he
Mm-hmm.
taps into his inner warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so again, I'm not at all telling you to beat yourself up more when I word things that way. I'm saying destroy the enemy, because there's enough outside forces that are going to give you a hard time in life trying to do. There's evil, there's darkness, there's the fact it's just never been done before, or nobody's ever seen someone who looks like you do it before because your
Mm-hmm.
age, gender, race, whatever. You get
Mm-hmm.
to be the first one. So there's enough meanness on the outside. You do not have time to waste being mean to yourself. Does that make sense a little clearer?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and the way you just phrased that of you've got to beat up the attacker, right? That's actually making the imposter syndrome or the insecurity an other versus being part of who we
Yeah.
are and how we're designed as humans. So, and I completely, completely agree with that. I think it's wise to study it like a scientist. It's wise to give it its own name. It's wise to say, all right, that one's showing up again. How are we going to combat that today? And when you do that with tough love, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. And I just want to say one more thing to the moms out there. You are not blessing your children by constantly putting yourself down. Like they're
Mm,
watching you, they're listening to you. And when you deflect compliments and constantly push yourself down, then they're going to think the person I respect and look up to and love, they do this. So therefore, that is the way.
hmm
You're also not
Yes.
doing yourself a service by staying in abusive relationships. That's not better than not having a dad around, for
Yeah.
example. A lot of people are like, well, it's best if they have a dad. No, it's not best if they have an abusive dad. It's not.
Yeah.
You're not helping them. And I know that's a side note, but it's super important that you show them what the standard is. You show them
Mm,
what to tolerate. You show them what love is, because especially if you are a wonderful, loving mother, then you are their example forever. And you're also the example to little boys. Like, in order to attract a wonderful, loving mother to my children, I must treat them this way.
mm,
Just be
yeah.
more aware of what you're tolerating on the inside and on the outside.
Right. Right. I'm so curious talking about what we tolerate and kind of the things that life throws at us, right? And how we choose to overcome those. And actually on this show, I talk a lot about the monsters that save us. And that story is actually inspired by the story of Jonah and the whale, and this idea that it was actually the whale swallowing him whole that led him to the shores of where he was supposed to be. And I feel so often that we have those moments in life, right? That we are just in the belly of the beast and we think, how am I ever going to overcome this? How am I going to get out of these circumstances? And we don't realize that the beast is actually taking us to where we need to be, right? Like this is our redemption story that's being written. And I feel like knowing so many facets of your story, and you told me at the beginning, of course, it would take you 3 hours to tell the full story. So let's just pull out a little piece of it. Was living in your car a monster that saved you? Like, tell me about that, how you journeyed within 7 years from being homeless to being on, was it the Forbes list of the 6 fastest growing woman owned companies in the world? I mean, like, that is a significant turnaround. And I'm curious to talk about that as the challenge that it was and how you turned that into an opportunity.
Yeah, it didn't feel good in the time. It was full of like, wow, you really are an absolute abysmal failure. The thoughts are true, Brittany.
Yeah.
The fears that you have, these insecurities, the projections. We, especially as women, we try to stabilize, we try to create like a safe nest to build stuff off of. I think it's our nature. And you took too many risks. You don't blah, blah, blah. All those thoughts they must be right because you freaking live in your car. It's not, here's your proof that you were looking for. And then I've trained and I'm continuing to train. How do you get rid of those negative thoughts? How do you not give them space in your world to destroy, to help, to let you quit? Because I've wanted to quit a lot.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I thought about that little girl and I remembered that deep sadness and brokenness in her eyes, that she would always be somebody's plaything, essentially. I mean, her life was hell. Hell.
Mm.
And I thought she would give anything for somebody to care about her situation. And she'd give anything that somebody that lives in the most abundant nation that could harness those opportunities, if they just tried, instead of just playing video games or going and partying their life away, they actually tried to apply this resource to solving problems in the world. If I just tried, I can figure this out. I just live in a place that this is possible. And so when you're really down, I want you to just ask yourself, what is even possible? Even if it's never been done before, is it possible? And that opens up a different part of your brain to help you start connecting to, in my experience, divine, which allows you to have different sets of plans. And again, it's not that this is probable or likely and I'm going to risk assess. No, just ask yourself, is it possible? And so I went from, writing my eulogy at 17, buying a house at 18, trying to get into real estate investing. The world crashes and burns. I'm trying to find somebody to learn from because I don't teach this stuff in college, to found somebody to learn from in Nashville, Tennessee, move up there to work for them, get fired. Now I'm living in my car. I can't tell my family because they told me I was going to be a loser forever because I didn't go to college, because they don't teach real estate investing in college. And I'm sitting there thinking, I want to quit. And then I remember that little girl. So again, that why is super powerful, and believing and knowing that you are capable, even if you don't feel like a leader or a boss girl, blah, blah, or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter if you feel it, it's possible. And so I found somebody I could learn from, even though I was fired from that guy because nobody was investing in real estate and he didn't need to pay my salary. I found somebody else to learn from. And so I worked for free for them. I lived in my car and I found a way to create value by finding them deals, managing projects, design. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff, but I asked really good questions and I took really good notes. And 9 months later, they said, all right, after I made them $400,000, all right, you're ready to do this on your own. And so I started, again, flopping around like a dying fish, trying to figure it out. And that next year, because I had worked to learn, not just worked to earn, I had it all up here. And then I started actually applying it and blew up. And it was really because I was a 21, 22-year-old girl that nobody believed in, that forced me to be so excellent. I was undeniably excellent. I don't believe in the word perfect, but I had to be really on it, even though I was a sloppy kid. Figured out how to be not sloppy because I had to have my crap together, because you look at me and they're like, I'm not investing in this chick.
Yeah.
The bankers didn't want to work. Nobody wanted to work with me because I was so young. And they'd never seen a girl do it. And so I just worked my butt off. And then, ended up scaling the crap out of it. And not only got on Forbes 6 fastest growing woman-owned company in the world and woman-led, but I ended up asking God, how do I go from, being able to, if it started off as like wanting to make the cash flow to then be able to live in Africa without having to ask people for money. The more missions I did in Africa and the more stuff we built over there, I realized when we build even an orphanage site, we were creating so much opportunity and jobs that parents stopped selling their kids into sex trafficking. I met those families that sold their little boys for $25.
Oh my God.
come through those villages every 3 months. And it's like all 9 of your kids are going to die, or you can have enough to buy a cow and feed them. Or, it's just crazy.
Mhm.
The desperation that these people deal with that hopefully nobody on this podcast listening has ever had to deal with.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so when we would develop these things, it would create hope in hopeless places. Other businesses moved in and like these regions started to flourish. So I shifted my model to just creating cash flow to shifting regions, practicing in
Mhm.
my own backyard so I could do it at scale overseas. And then I said, God, how do I go from doing this in my own backyard of America overseas? Like, what's the bridge? And I heard loud and clear, start on islands. And I'm like,
Mhm.
islands. And so, crazy enough, I did my very first deal by myself outside of working with the guys that I'd worked for free, January 2011. And I contracted the island December 2016. So,
Incredible.
and I did hundreds of projects in between. And I was
Yes.
really involved. It was just very fast scaling because I had that why.
Yes. And listeners, Britnie's talking about Ariel Island, which is an incredible place to check out. Talk to your travel advisor, of course, about your next corporate getaway or your next vacation or your next island retreat. And you're doing really incredible things with Ariel now.
The island, it's called the Ariel BVI, it's located on Buck Island, is a space of healing. And really, this vision came to me through going on my mission trips. I go on all these different trips all over the world. And every single time I would just get really upset because I'm meeting children who are starving to death, dying of something as simple as diarrhea, waterborne illness, abuse out the wazoo, desperation, no jobs, no trees. Like the list goes on and on of the problems that exist that we've already solved somewhere in the world.
Mhm.
And so I really asked God, there's so many needs. I obviously can only do so much in my lifetime. What's the real solution for this? And what I've been guided into is understanding that there are so many amazing, capable, wonderful human beings that have all this access and are living a life just drifting.
Mhm.
How do you wake them up to
Mhm.
a force for good that they're called to be, where that's where they find their joy, their love, their passion, their fulfillment anyway, is when they start actually knowing who they are, why they matter, and start doing the thing they're called to do. And that is what the purpose of the island is. Yes, it's got the blue water, it's beautiful. You'll probably see whales. It's on the cliffside. You're going to be moved just interacting with nature.
Mhm.
We've been so intentional to help you heal and find yourself. Because if you find you, then you start to actually like you, which is what we're talking about earlier. And we
Yes.
need to like you because when you like you and you start aligning with your purpose, then you can think about more than just yourself and your problems.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
critical, I think, for what the world needs right now.
It is. It is. And what's so interesting, knowing you and knowing your journey, is in the past few years, because we're going to go from very, very macro to very, very micro now to talk about the fact that in the past few years, you found your person, you fell in love, you got married, and very recently you had a baby. And and when we talk about knowing your purpose and knowing your identity and all the things that happen in an individual's life, I feel like that journey into motherhood is such a profound shift. And I want to talk about that and what that has done for you and for your purpose, but also for your relationship with what success looks like. What has these last, how old is Bear? Now is he 4 months, 3 months?
5 months.
5 months, 5 months old. What does this past, half year look like for you?
It's been fun. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said earlier, he's teaching me how to operate from a place of joy that I had kind of gotten away from. I think it's super important to define all the things that you're going for in life.
Hmm.
One of my siblings said, when I told her, the day I told her I was pregnant, she said, welcome to feeling guilty for the rest of your life. And I was like, God bless.
Yeah. Right. No, thanks.
And I was like, why? And they said, because you're always going to feel like you're not a good enough mom, or you could be doing this, or you should be doing that. Da, da, da. And I was like, I reject that.
Hmm.
And what I found is this is just a part of my life. And I don't know if it's because I'm homeschooled or I just decided this early on, but I decided to constantly be defining things. So like, to Britnie freaking Turner, what does success look like, mean, and how is it defined?
Mm-hmm.
As a business person, as a wife, as a mother, I actually have written out the definition and the picture of what that looks like and is for me. I am not going to play by what the world's rules are, because all of that is just a bunch of marketing for sales. And so they're going to change their rules every other year. I need to live by my own rules and what I feel accountable to God. My child is obviously my number one priority, but he's not my only thing in life.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get focused, amazing amounts of present attention when I'm not on my phone every single day for X amount of hours, undisturbed. But he doesn't get all hours. And I had to define, with all the other things going on, with all of our rescues, my nonprofit has now rescued over 8,000 people in 24 months,
Yeah.
all led by veterans that were suicidal, that we helped heal and repurpose. And so that work can't stop. It's still really important. So how do I do both? And so I just want to challenge you all, start defining things. Obviously, my world is different. My day is different. But am I a wonderful mother to my son to where he feels it if I do all the dishes every single time? Does that make me a better mother? Or is there a better use of my time and I can create an opportunity for somebody to come in and clean my house X amount of times a week?
Yeah.
What defines it to a 5-month-old? How do I
Mm-hmm.
be the best mom to him? And it's going to keep changing as he gets older. Wants and needs are going to change. And so I get to keep defining those things. But under no circumstances is he my only world. And
Yeah.
that was really important to me and my husband, is that we say, obviously, God first, our relationship, our son, mission, blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to give him the tired, I'm texting, I'm on calls, bouncing him on my legs, like da da da. Does that make sense? I'm trying to talk about the part that I think would be most effective for you ladies, because I can talk for hours about how adorable his freaking giggle is and how he loves when I talk about his middle name being Danger, which it really is. His legal middle name is Danger, which is hilarious to us.
Yes.
He's going to use that for the rest of his life. But for some reason, when we talk about it, he just giggles the day away. And he's got the cutest little gummy smile, and he's changed my whole world.
Yes.
But it's important, when you know your calling, like, how can you have it all? How can you have it
Yeah.
all? It normally just takes having a vision for these different areas of your life, your relationships, all the important ones, your health, your finances, your impact, your lifestyle. Like, everything needs you to take the time to think through what you really want and then start creating a plan for that. I literally created a course for this because I realized I was doing something a lot of people don't ever take the time to do. I'm like, you just wake up and think it's going to go well. Like you just hope life just goes well with no plan. And the plan never is executed perfectly, but at least there's a dang direction. And so,
Right. Well, I think what you touched on at the very beginning of that, in terms of like, you have this baby, you have motherhood. This is extremely important, but you also have this mission. You have this creation, multiple creations for you that are fulfilling really important work in the world. And I think no matter whether we're saving individuals or we're simply living out our calling, it's really important work, no matter what scale that is. But
yeah,
for yours, it's legitimately life or death. And so that cannot stop. And so how do I think balance is a total myth and a ridiculous word that's thrown around way too often. But
I
how do
don't
you honor all parts of you? And then you, as a model, right? You're modeling to your child what a mother is capable of, versus martyring for everything and saying like, oh, but I must sacrifice what's important and what I'm called to. And I think that was what I was so curious about for you, because you have this beautiful calling that you've been so very open about and you've shared so passionately today. And so how do you pursue it? How do you do that and honor all pieces? And that was a really great answer to that.
Yep. I love that. And I think that's exactly it, is if you are losing yourself,
Mm.
then you have nothing to give.
Yeah. Right. So how do we keep ourselves from losing ourselves, especially when there's a big identity shift on the horizon, whether we are about to have a baby, or maybe that baby's about to go to preschool, or maybe that, like all the things that we tie ourselves, or maybe the business is entering into another season that you never saw coming. I mean, for me, I remember having a shift when the business started succeeding in ways that I never imagined. And now I'm going, well, wait a minute, I've tied my success and my self-worth to that. We've got to separate those things.
You have to, because you can lose it all in 2 seconds.
Yes.
Really can. And that identity, start exactly like she's saying, because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of crises. And so I had to determine early on, I am the same valuable enough daughter of the God of the universe, and just as valuable when I lived in my car as when I own an island. I really am the same Britnie Turner. And humans will come in and out of my life and use me for different things based on what I have and don't have, whatever. But I have to know that I'm just as valuable with it all and with nothing on paper. And we think we serve enough in disaster zones to watch it all go away and to see what matters most to people. I always ask them, what matters to you now that didn't matter before? And they said, the breath in my lungs. The fact my kid is just alive, even if he leaves his clothes out or gives me an attitude every now and then, like the fact he's just alive, like there's just a different level of gratitude when you lose it all. And I don't want y'all to have to go through that, to walk in that gratitude.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You've brought today just a really great perspective shift and perspective leveling, right? That you have seen a lot and you've experienced a lot that most people have not or do not on a regular basis because of the work that you do and because you are living out your life's calling and your mission. So I know that listeners will want to learn more and will want to follow along and dive into all things Britnie Turner, maybe even take the course that you're talking about if you've got that available. Can you tell us more about how they can find you and how they can follow your work?
Yeah, BritnieTurner.com is probably the best place to find all the different resources. Britnie is spelled weird because my parents thought they made it up. So it's BRNIE Turner.com. And that course is called G-Force Entrepreneurs. It's 12 weeks where I personally walk a group through how to go from vision to execution and how that infiltrates into every single thing you do, including the way in which you make money. So it could be streams of income or your business, whatever that looks like. Like, how do you start having a life of compounding impact and fulfillment? Because a lot of people are walking around miserable.
Well, and you talk a lot about the reason we need the resources, right? It's not apologizing for making a profit. It's making a profit so that we can do good with the resources that we're creating and how to steward that on a worldwide basis. And that is really important work. Okay, talking about walking around miserable, you definitely don't do that. And one of the questions that I always like to ask my guests is a question we ask at our dinner table. My 3-year-old has changed it from what made you smile today to what was your happy today. She now asks that question every night because it's a way of cultivating gratitude. And so I like to know that. What was your smile today? What was your happy today, Britnie Turner?
Oh man. I have this after the show. I have this little, I call it the babysitter. It's this little thing that my kid's playing in. And it's, we've had it in our life for 2 days and he is just losing his mind. And he's just like, doing this little thing. And my sister messaged me and said, please put this video to the song 2-Step.
Yes.
Yep. So I put him to a rap song and just watched him dance with his little loud feet to 2-Step. And that was my smile today.
That's a good smile. Bear bringing the smiles often and always.
Bear is bringing the smiles.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. It was an awesome conversation. We really appreciate you coming on the show. If you've gained some valuable insights from listening to Who Made You the Boss, there are 2 ways we ask our listeners to show us some love. First, share this episode with a friend who you know would benefit. The more we impact others, the more we can grow our resources to impact you. It's a win-win and it helps us a ton. Second, if you'll take a moment to leave Who Made You the Boss a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform, that helps us continue to create meaningful work, and it just makes our day. Thank you, listeners, for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep being the boss of your own incredible story.